3 months after the failed invasion, Admiral Korath sat in a comfortable room overlooking Earth's memorial gardens. Through the window he could see millions of white flowers swaying in the gentle breeze. Each bloom represented someone who had died in humanity's ancient wars. He was not a prisoner in the traditional sense. His quarters were spacious and pleasant. Human attendants brought him excellent food and offered entertainment. He could walk in designated areas and even use communication systems to contact his home empire. But he was trapped more completely than any chains could hold him. The knowledge of what humanity truly was had shattered everything he thought he understood about power, war, and survival. And Young Ho entered the room carrying a pot of tea and some simple cups. The historian had been Korath's primary contact during his stay on Earth. The human appeared to be middle-aged, with kind eyes and gentle manners. "Good morning, Admiral," Young Ho said politely, setting the tea service on a low table. "I hope you slept well." Korath accepted the tea but said nothing. For weeks he had demanded answers. How had humanity hidden such devastating capabilities? Why had they allowed the invasion to proceed? What was their real purpose? Now he no longer asked questions. The answers were too disturbing. "I've brought some viewing material for you today," Young Ho said, activating a holographic display. "Documentary footage from our history. I thought you might find it educational." The display showed scenes from humanity's past. Ancient wars with primitive weapons, medieval battles with swords and arrows, industrial conflicts with guns and explosives, nuclear warfare that could destroy cities. "Your people were certainly violent," Korath admitted grudgingly. "Yes," Young Ho agreed sadly. "We were very good at killing each other. Perhaps too good." The documentary continued, showing the gradual escalation of human warfare. Weapons that could destroy planets, devices that could manipulate time itself, technologies that made the Corvani Empire's arsenal look like toys. "This footage is from our last war," Young Ho explained, as the display showed battles that defied comprehension. "We had learned to weaponize gravity, quantum fields, even space-time itself. The conflict lasted only 3 days, but it nearly destroyed our entire species." Korath watched in fascination and horror as human weapons reshaped reality itself. Stars were moved like chess pieces. Planets were created and destroyed at will. The very laws of physics became tools of war. "How did you survive?" he asked. "Barely," Young Ho replied. "When it ended, fewer than 100 million humans remained alive. Our homeworld was shattered. Our colonies were ruined. We had nearly made ourselves extinct." The documentary showed the aftermath. A species standing on the edge of oblivion, surrounded by the wreckage of their own making. "That is when we made our choice," Young Ho continued. "We could continue down the path of destruction, or we could find another way. So you chose peace." "Not exactly." Young Ho smiled gently. "We chose to become so overwhelmingly powerful that peace became inevitable." The display shifted to show humanity's reconstruction, but this was not the simple rebuilding Korath had expected. Instead, he saw the most sophisticated weapons project in galactic history. "We spent the next 5,000 years designing the perfect defense," Young Ho explained. "Not weapons that could destroy our enemies, but systems that would make attacking us pointless." Korath watched as humans built installations throughout their space. What looked like peaceful colonies were actually components in a vast network. Gardens that could manipulate gravity, art installations that controlled quantum fields, children's playgrounds that monitored space-time itself. "Every human child learns to tend systems that could unmake stars," Young Ho said calmly. "Every artist creates beauty that doubles as weapons architecture. Every philosopher contemplates the mathematics of universal defense." "But why?" Korath demanded. "Why go to such lengths? Why not simply build a normal military?" Young Ho looked puzzled, as if the question made no sense. "Admiral, a normal military exists to fight wars. We built something that makes wars impossible to fight." Nam Haiwan entered the room, carrying what appeared to be a simple book. But Korath had learned that nothing in human space was as simple as it appeared. The quiet librarian had turned out to be the coordinator of humanity's intelligence networks. "Admiral," she said politely, "we have received responses from across the galaxy regarding your invasion attempt." She opened her book and began reading reports that made Korath's blood run cold. "The Fricks have canceled all expansion plans and requested peaceful trade agreements. The Netherians have disbanded their military fleets and are focusing on cultural development. The Helix Council has declared human space a protected zone that no member species may approach without invitation. Korath stared at her in disbelief. You shared our tactical records? We shared everything, Nam replied calmly. Your fleet movements, weapon capabilities, strategic planning, even personal communications. We wanted the galaxy to understand exactly what happened here. But that's military intelligence. Secret information. Young-Ho looked confused again. Admiral, we have no secrets. Why would we hide our capabilities? We want every potential aggressor to know exactly what they would face. The truth was devastating in its simplicity. Humanity had not hidden their weapons because they wanted to keep them secret. They had disguised them because they wanted anyone who found them to understand that resistance was futile. Song Myung-ho entered the room, bringing more tea and a gentle smile. The strategic coordinator moved with the same peaceful manner as every other human Korath had met. Admiral, Song said kindly, we've prepared transportation for your return home. Your empire has requested your immediate recall. They're afraid, Korath said, understanding the implications. They're wise, Song corrected. Your leaders have reviewed our defensive capabilities and concluded that peaceful coexistence is preferable to extinction. Korath stood and walked to the window, looking out at the memorial gardens. Millions of flowers represented the price humanity had paid to learn their lesson about war. How many species have tried to invade you before us? He asked. You were the first in almost 3,000 years, Young-Ho replied. The last attempt was made by the Zelkari Consortium. After we demonstrated our capabilities, they became some of our closest allies. Demonstrated how? Song smiled gently. We moved their homestar exactly 1 meter to the left, then moved it back. Just to show we could. The casual mention of such impossible power made Korath feel dizzy. Moving a star as a demonstration was beyond the comprehension of most species. Why did you let us attack at all, he asked. You could have stopped us at the edge of your space. Because, Song explained patiently. Sometimes the galaxy needs reminders. It had been too long since anyone tested our defenses. Other species were beginning to wonder if the old stories about human capabilities were true. Nam nodded in agreement. Now they know. We estimate it will be at least another 1,000 years before anyone considers attacking human space again. As Korath prepared to leave Earth, he was given one final tour of the memorial gardens. Kang Dae-ho, the same cultural anthropologist who had guided alien visitors months ago, walked with him among the white flowers. Each bloom represents a choice, Dae-ho explained. Someone who died because we had not yet learned that true strength comes from never needing to use it. And if someone forces you to use it anyway? Korath asked. Dae-ho touched a flower that glowed softly in response. Then we remind them why we chose peace in the first place. The final monument in the garden was simple, a single stone bearing words in every galactic language. Korath read the human version. This honors not the wars we fought, but the wars we prevented by being too dangerous to fight. When Admiral Korath returned to the Corvani Empire, he carried with him complete records of human defensive capabilities. His government reviewed the data and immediately issued orders that human space was to be avoided at all costs. Other species across the galaxy received similar reports. The peaceful humans who created art and tended gardens were revealed to be the most dangerous civilization in galactic history, not because they wanted to conquer or destroy, but because they had made themselves so powerful that nobody could force them to fight. And in their floating cities and crystal gardens, humans continued their peaceful lives. Children played in parks that could reshape reality. Artists painted murals with pigments that monitored quantum fields. Teachers instructed students in the philosophy of overwhelming force used in service of absolute peace. The galaxy learned to leave them alone. After all, some flowers only bloom when disturbed, and nobody wanted to see what humanity's war flowers would look like in full bloom. Admiral Korath's flagship entered Earth's atmosphere like a dark mountain falling from the sky. Behind him, 1,000 Corvani warships blotted out the sun. Their weapons could turn continents to glass. Their shields could deflect anything humans might throw at them, or so they thought. This is Admiral Korath of the Corvani Empire, he broadcast to the planet below. I demand the immediate surrender of your species. You have 1 hour to respond before we begin the final bombardment. On Earth's surface, people continued their daily activities as if nothing had happened. Children played in gardens. Artists painted murals. Teachers instructed students in the ways of peace and harmony. But in a simple building that looked like a community center, Jang Eun-soo sat at what appeared to be a traditional Korean gyeogeum. The director of cultural preservation ran her fingers gently across the strings, creating beautiful music that drifted through the air. Her assistant, Ryu Tae-kyung, sat nearby with his own instrument. He had been waiting for this moment his entire life, as had his father before him and his grandfather before that. For 5,000 years his family had maintained this one simple duty. "Director," he said softly, "the Admiral is waiting for our response." Yoon-soo smiled peacefully and nodded to him. "Then let us give him one." Tae-kyung pressed a single string on his gyeogeum. The note that emerged was pure and clear, beautiful beyond description. It resonated through the air, through the building, through the ground beneath their feet. But this note was special. It had been designed 5,000 years ago by the greatest musicians and mathematicians humanity had ever produced. The frequency was precisely calculated to activate systems that had been sleeping since humanity's last war. The sound traveled not just through air, but through dimensions that the Corvani could not detect. It reached crystal formations on distant moons, gravitational generators hidden in asteroid belts, and quantum computers disguised as gardens. Across human space, everything changed in an instant. Admiral Korath felt it first as a strange sensation, like the air itself was becoming thick. Then his instruments began showing impossible readings. "Sir," his tactical officer said in a worried voice, "something's happening to local spacetime." On the main display, the peaceful Earth below began to reveal its true nature. The floating cities were not just beautiful architecture. They were orbital weapons platforms with enough firepower to crack moons. The gardens were not just pretty decorations. They were targeting systems capable of tracking objects moving faster than light. But that was only the beginning. From hidden installations across the solar system, humanity's real defenses came online. What the Corvani had thought were asteroid mining stations revealed themselves as gravitational manipulation arrays. What looked like space habitats were actually quantum field generators capable of altering the laws of physics in localized areas. "What in the seven hells?" Korath whispered as his sensors detected energy signatures unlike anything in his database. Song Myung-ho, the gentle teacher who worked with children, appeared on the Corvani communication channels. He smiled kindly as if he were addressing a class of students. "Admiral Korath," he said politely, "allow me to introduce myself. I am Song Myung-ho, Strategic Coordinator for Human Defense. I believe you wish to speak with someone in authority." "Strategic Coordinator?" Korath snarled. "Your people told us you had no military." "We don't," Song replied calmly. "We have something much more efficient." The Corvani Admiral looked at his tactical displays and felt cold fear creeping through his armor. Around his fleet, space itself was beginning to change. Gravitational fields appeared from nowhere, creating invisible nets that slowed his ships to a crawl. Quantum disruptors made his weapon systems flicker and fail. "You see, Admiral," Song continued in his patient teacher's voice, "when my ancestors chose peace 5,000 years ago, they did not do so from weakness. They did so from a position of such overwhelming strength that war became unnecessary. On Mars, Oh Sung-min made a final adjustment to his crystal garden. The beautiful formation suddenly blazed with light as it connected to similar installations throughout human space. Together, they formed a computational network that could predict and counter any possible attack. Every garden you saw was a weapon system," Song explained as Korath watched his fleet become trapped in fields of manipulated gravity. "Every meditation center was a command bunker. Every work of art was a component in the most sophisticated defense network ever created. The Corvani ships found themselves caught like insects in an invisible web. Their weapons would not fire. Their engines would not respond. Even their life support systems were being controlled by external forces. This is impossible," Korath growled. "No species could hide such capabilities." Song looked genuinely confused. "Hide? Admiral, we never hid anything. You simply misunderstood what you were seeing." On the hidden moon base, Choi Minho's crystal formations were now blazing like miniature stars. Each one controlled gravitational forces that could move planets. Together they reached out and gently but firmly stopped every Corvani ship in the solar system. "You thought peace meant weakness," Song continued his explanation. "You assumed that because we chose not to fight, we could not fight. You believed that 5,000 years without war meant we had forgotten how to wage it. Admiral Korath was beginning to understand, and the understanding filled him with terror. We never forgot, Song said softly. We perfected it. Across human space, systems that had been disguised as peaceful infrastructure revealed their true purpose. Every human colony had been built around weapons capable of unmaking matter itself. Every transport ship contained gravitational manipulators that could tear holes in space-time. The refugee fleets that had evacuated from Corvani attacks were not fleeing in panic. They had positioned themselves in precise formations that turned the entire solar system into a single, massive weapon. Your invasion force, Song observed, studying readings from his hidden command center, consists of 1,437 ships carrying approximately 12 million personnel. Impressive by the standards of most species. Korath said nothing. His weapons officers were reporting total systems failure across the fleet. By human standards, Song continued, you have brought a very small force to test a very large defense network. On Earth, children continued playing in gardens that could reshape reality. Artists continued painting murals with pigments that doubled as quantum sensors. Teachers continued instructing students in philosophy that included the mathematics of universal destruction. But now, the hidden truth was visible to those who knew how to look. Humanity had not abandoned their capacity for violence. They had spent 5 millennia turning their entire civilization into a weapon so sophisticated that it made conventional warfare obsolete. We could destroy your fleet in approximately 12 seconds, Song informed the trapped admiral. We could unmake every atom in your ships or simply redirect you into the nearest star. The choice is entirely yours. What do you want? Korath asked, his voice barely a whisper. What we have always wanted, Song replied. Peace. The Corvani admiral looked around his bridge at officers who were staring at their useless control panels. Outside, his mighty fleet hung motionless in space, completely at the mercy of a species he had thought was defenseless. You see, Admiral, we learned something 5,000 years ago that your people have not yet discovered. True peace does not come from being too weak to fight. It comes from being too strong to need to. Park Jin-woo, monitoring the situation from his hidden control room, watched energy levels that could power entire star systems. Humanity had built weapons that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. But they only used them when someone forced their hand. We will release your ships, Song announced. You will withdraw from human space immediately. You will inform your empire and every other potentially hostile species about what you have learned here today. And if we refuse? Korath asked, though he already knew the answer. Song smiled with the patience of a teacher addressing a slow student. Admiral, you are currently trapped inside a defense network that spans multiple dimensions. Your refusal would be noted and addressed appropriately. The Corvani fleet found their systems coming back online, but only long enough to begin their retreat. Invisible forces guided their ships away from Earth, away from human space, back toward the dark regions where they had come from. As they fled, Admiral Korath broadcast a final message to his empire. Avoid human space at all costs. They are not what they appear to be. Behind them, Earth's gardens continued to bloom in the sunlight, tended by gentle people who had just reminded the galaxy why no one had dared to disturb their peace for 5,000 years. The Corvani had been conquering for 2 weeks, and Admiral Korath was getting angry. This was not how invasions were supposed to work. Where was the fear? The desperate last stands? The pleading for mercy? Instead, everywhere his forces went, they found the same thing. Empty buildings, functioning systems, and absolutely no one to fight. Report, he demanded as his ship approached Mars. Captain Vextar appeared on the communication screen, looking frustrated. Sir, we have secured another 12 colonies. 0 casualties on our side. 0 resistance from theirs. What about prisoners? Information? Someone must be coordinating their evacuation. That's the strange part, sir. We found evacuation plans posted openly in every city. Complete timetables, transport schedules, destination points. They weren't hiding anything. They just left. Korath slammed his fist on his command chair. In every other conquest, the enemy had fought back. Even when defeat was certain, species would resist out of pride or desperation. But humans simply walked away from everything they had built. On Mars, Bai Sujin continued her concert. The music had been playing for days now, broadcast across all human networks. To the Corvani listening devices, it sounded like a beautiful funeral song. They assumed the humans were mourning their lost worlds. They were wrong. Sujin's hands moved in patterns that had taken centuries to perfect. Each gesture controlled frequencies that traveled through dimensions the Corvani could not detect. Her orchestra played harmonies that synchronized with the rotation of planets, the orbital mechanics of moons, and the quantum vibrations of space itself. "Movement 8 begins now," she announced softly. Lim Dong-hyun translated her musical directions into mathematical sequences. His fingers danced across what looked like a simple keyboard, but each note sent activation codes to systems scattered throughout human space. On the asteroid belt mining station Series 7, massive machines that had pretended to be ore processors for 5,000 years began their real function. Gravitational field generators disguised as centrifuges started creating invisible nets throughout the solar system. Oh, Seung-min made another small adjustment to his crystal garden on Mars. The formation now looked like a beautiful sculpture, representing the dance of atoms. In reality, it was a quantum computational matrix calculating the exact position of every Corvani ship in real time. The invaders continued their advance, unaware that they were walking into the most sophisticated trap ever created. On Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, the Corvani found something different. The human research station there had not been evacuated. Light still glowed in the windows. Energy readings showed people still inside. "Finally," growled Commander Zektar as his landing ships approached the station. "Maybe these humans will give us a proper fight." But when his soldiers breached the facility, they found something unexpected. Humans were still there, working calmly at their stations. They looked up as the Corvani burst in, but showed no fear. "Oh, hello," said a human woman named Yoon Ji-woo. "We were expecting you." Zektar raised his weapon.
"Surrender immediately."
"Of course," Ji-woo replied. She set down her tools and gestured to her colleagues. "We have prepared comfortable quarters for you. Would you like some tea?" The Corvani soldiers looked at each other in confusion. This human was offering them hospitality after they had invaded her home. "What kind of research do you do here?" Zektar demanded. "Agricultural studies," Ji-woo explained, leading them through the facility. "We grow plants that can survive in extreme conditions." "Very peaceful work." She showed them laboratories filled with beautiful gardens. Plants grew in intricate patterns under artificial suns. Everything looked innocent and scientific. What the Corvani could not see were the quantum field generators hidden beneath each garden bed, or the dimensional anchors disguised as irrigation systems, or the fact that every plant was actually a biological component in a massive computing network. "This is ridiculous," Zektar muttered. "These humans are either the most innocent species in the galaxy or—" He could not finish the thought. The alternative was too impossible to consider. Back on Earth, Kim Hyejin held a meeting with her senior coordinators. To anyone watching, it looked like a peaceful discussion among friends. They sat in a garden pavilion drinking tea and speaking in soft voices. "Status report," Hyejin requested gently. "All outer positions secured," reported En Young-ho, a quiet man who supposedly managed historical archives. "The Corvani have taken the bait perfectly. Their fleet is positioned exactly where our models predicted." Nam Hae-won, who appeared to be a simple librarian, consulted what looked like a book of poetry. "Deep space monitoring shows no additional Corvani forces. This is their entire invasion fleet. Temporal positioning?" asked Hyejin. Song Myung-ho, a gentle teacher who worked with children, smiled peacefully. "Optimal window opens in 36 hours. All systems will reach peak synchronization." They spoke as if they were planning a garden party, not the response to an alien invasion. Meanwhile, Admiral Korath was growing suspicious. His tactical computers had analyzed human evacuation patterns, and something bothered him. The humans were not fleeing randomly. They were moving to specific coordinates that formed geometric patterns throughout space. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "human refugee ships are gathering at designated points. The arrangements appear to follow some kind of mathematical sequence." "What kind of sequence?" "Unknown, sir." "But it's too organized to be random. They're positioning themselves in a three-dimensional grid that extends throughout the solar system." Korath studied the display showing human ship positions. The pattern was beautiful and complex, like a work of art stretched across space. But it also looked like something else, something that reminded him of old tactical manuals he had studied as a young officer. It looks like a weapons array, he said slowly. Sir, an ancient formation. But that's impossible. Humans have no weapons. Deep beneath Earth's crust, Park Jin-woo and thousands of other maintenance workers monitored systems that had been waiting for this moment for 5 millennia. Power levels climbed steadily across networks hidden in planetary cores, asteroid mining stations, and the quantum foam itself. Fusion reactors at 90%, reported one technician. Gravitational, manipulation arrays at full charge, called another. Quantum field generators synchronized across all platforms, said a third. Jin-woo watched readings that showed energy outputs equivalent to entire stars. Systems that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself were coming online for the first time since humanity had supposedly abandoned warfare. But above ground, people continued their peaceful lives. Children played in parks. Artists painted beautiful murals. Philosophers discussed the nature of existence and the beauty of nonviolence. Choi Min-ho made final adjustments to his crystal garden. Each formation now pulsed with energy that connected to similar installations across human space. Together they formed a network capable of processing information faster than any computer ever built. Master, asked one of his students, what happens next? Min-ho smiled gently as he touched a crystal that began glowing like a small sun. Next, dear child, we remind the galaxy why humanity chose peace. The student looked confused, but Min-ho did not explain further. Some lessons could only be learned through experience. Admiral Korath's fleet approached the inner solar system, confident in their overwhelming firepower. They had conquered human space without firing a shot in anger. Now they prepared for the final assault on Earth itself. They had no idea that they were swimming in an ocean of hidden weapons, that every asteroid they passed contained systems capable of unmaking matter, that every empty space around them was filled with invisible nets of gravitational force. The humans had not abandoned war. They had spent 5,000 years perfecting it. Soon the Corvani would understand the difference between winning and victory, between taking territory and surviving the consequences. The symphony was almost ready to begin. 3 days after the alien visitors left Earth, the real visitors arrived. They came from the dark space between stars, where no light reached and no peaceful species dared to travel. The Corvani Empire had been watching, waiting, studying. For 200 years they had observed humanity from the shadows. Admiral Korath stood on the bridge of his massive warship, the Bloodfang. Through the viewing screen, he could see hundreds of other ships in his fleet. Each one carried enough firepower to level a city. Together, they could destroy entire worlds, target confirmed, reported his weapons officer. Human colony World Harmony Station. Population 2 million. No defensive systems detected. Korath smiled, showing sharp teeth. The Corvani were born warriors. Their skin was thick as armor, their claws sharp as blades, their minds focused on conquest. They had destroyed 17 civilizations and enslaved 43 others. The humans will be the easiest yet, he growled. 5,000 years of peace have made them soft as newborn cubs. The first attack began at dawn on Harmony Station. The colonists were tending their farms and teaching their children when the Corvani ships appeared in the sky. Massive vessels blotted out the sun as energy beams struck the ground, but something was wrong. Where Korath expected screaming and panic, he found only calm evacuation. The humans moved quickly but without fear, loading their children and elderly onto transport ships. They abandoned their homes and farms without fighting, without even looking back. Sir, his tactical officer reported, the humans are not resisting. They're just leaving, Korath frowned. Leaving? Where are they going? Unknown, sir. Their ships are moving to designated evacuation points. It's all very organized. Within 6 hours, Harmony Station was empty. The Corvani found perfectly functioning cities with no one in them. The lights still worked. The farms still grew food. Even the public kitchens had fresh meals waiting on the tables. This is not how conquest works, muttered Korath. On Earth, Kim Hyejin received the news in her office overlooking the memorial gardens. The director of Global Harmony sat quietly as her assistants reported the attack. Her face showed only sadness and disappointment. Alert all human worlds, she said softly. Begin peaceful evacuation procedures. Contact our allies in the Helix Council. Ask for help. Her assistants bowed and left to carry out her orders. but one remained behind. Lee So-min, who had guided the alien tourists just days before, approached Hyejin's desk. "Director," So-min said quietly, "the nearest Helix Council fleet is 3 weeks away." "I know," Hyejin replied. "That should be enough time." "Time for what?" Hyejin smiled gently and walked to her window. Below, people were going about their daily lives. Children played in parks. Adults tended gardens and created art. No one seemed afraid or worried. "Time for the flowers to bloom," she said. Across human space, the pattern repeated itself. The Corvani attacked colony after colony, finding the same strange response. No resistance, no panic, just calm evacuation. Human families packed their belongings and left their homes without fighting back. Captain Vextar led the ground forces on New Garden, humanity's largest agricultural world. His soldiers marched through empty cities expecting booby traps or hidden enemies. Instead, they found libraries with books still open on tables, art studios with paint still wet on canvases, schools where children's drawings still hung on walls. "Where are the weapons?" Vextar demanded. "Where are the soldiers? The bunkers? The battle plans?" His scouts searched everywhere but found nothing. The humans had simply walked away from their entire civilization as if it meant nothing to them. On the dark side of Earth's moon, Choi Min-ho worked in his real garden. This one was different from the peaceful display the tourists had seen. Here, crystalline structures grew in complex patterns. Each crystal pulsed with soft light, connected to others by threads of energy too thin to see. His apprentice Ji-woo watched as he made small adjustments to the arrangements. "Master," she said, "the evacuation reports show all outer colonies are clear. The invaders have taken 14 worlds so far." Min-ho nodded and touched a crystal that immediately began glowing brighter. "Good, and the Corvani fleet positions?" "Exactly where our models predicted they would be." Ji-woo consulted a device that looked like a simple gardening tool. "They're following the standard invasion pattern, moving toward the inner worlds, trying to force us into a single decisive battle." "How predictable," Min-ho said with gentle amusement. "They think like warriors from the old times. All force, no patience." On Mars, Bae-soo-jin stood in what appeared to be a concert hall. Musicians sat with their instruments ready, watching her hands for direction. But these were not ordinary musicians, and this was not ordinary music. "Begin the 7th movement," she said softly. The music that filled the hall was beautiful beyond description. Harmonies wove together like silk, creating sounds that touched the soul. But hidden within the melodies were mathematical patterns, frequencies that resonated with quantum fields, rhythms that synchronized with orbital mechanics. Lim Dong-hyun sat at what looked like a simple piano, translating Soo-jin's musical directions into sequences of numbers. Those numbers traveled through hidden networks to machines scattered throughout the solar system. On asteroid mining stations, automated systems received their wake-up calls for the first time in 5,000 years. In the cores of planets, massive engines began their warming cycles. In the quantum foam between dimensions, sensors started mapping space-time itself. Oh Seung-min worked alone on the crystal gardens of Mars. To anyone watching, he was simply an artist arranging beautiful formations. Each crystal he moved created ripples in fields the Corvani could not detect. Each adjustment sent signals to weapon systems disguised as art installations. The invaders continued their advance, growing more confident with each easy victory. They had expected humanity's surrender by now. Instead, they found empty worlds and polite evacuation notices. "Attention Corvani forces," came a broadcast from Earth. "This is Director Kim Hyejin of the Global Harmony Council. We regret that you have chosen violence over peace. We ask you to reconsider your actions and withdraw from human space." Admiral Korath laughed when he heard the message. "Is this their surrender? They ask us to leave? After we have taken their worlds?" But something in the human woman's voice bothered him. She did not sound afraid. She did not sound defeated. She sounded patient, like someone waiting for something to happen. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're detecting strange broadcasts from human space. Music mostly, and some kind of mathematical transmissions we can't decode." "Ignore it," Korath ordered. "Probably their final cultural expressions before we conquer them completely." The Corvani fleet moved deeper into the solar system. They had taken the outer colonies without firing a shot in anger. Now they approached the inner worlds, Mars, Venus, and finally Earth itself. Behind them, on the worlds they had conquered, the lights still worked and the machines still hummed. But now those machines were connected to something vast and patient, something that had been sleeping for 5,000 years. In hidden bunkers deep beneath Earth's surface, people like Park Jin-woo monitored readings that would have terrified any species capable of understanding them. Power levels rising across hundreds of systems, gravitational field generators coming online, quantum manipulation arrays reaching operational status. But on the surface, humans continued their peaceful lives. Children played in gardens that could reshape reality. Adults tended to art that could unmake stars. Teachers instructed students in philosophy that included the mathematics of universal destruction. The Corvani thought they were winning. They measured victory in worlds conquered and resistance crushed. They could not understand a species that measured victory in years, decades, and millennia. Soon they would learn the difference between surrender and strategy, between weakness and patience, between losing a battle and winning a war that had not yet begun. The flowers Minho tended were beginning to bloom. The morning sun cast golden light across the floating gardens of Neo-Seoul. Kang Dae-ho adjusted his simple robes and smiled at the group of alien visitors standing before him. The insect-like Vricks clicked their mandibles nervously while the crystal beings called Netherians hummed in soft harmonies. "Welcome to Earth," Dae-ho said warmly. "I am honored to show you our world." The tallest Vricks, Ambassador Click, shifted his 6 legs. "We have heard amazing stories about your people. 5,000 years without a single war. How is this possible?" Dae-ho gestured toward the peaceful city floating in the clouds below them. Buildings made of living wood swayed gently in the breeze. Gardens bloomed on every surface. Children played in parks while their parents tended to flowers and read books under shade trees. "Come," he said. "Let me show you." They walked through streets where no vehicles moved. People traveled by walking or riding in silent pods that glided through the air. Everyone they passed smiled and bowed politely. The aliens saw humans painting murals, composing music, and discussing philosophy in quiet groups. "Where are your police?" asked Netherian speaker Crystal Song. Her voice rang like wind chimes. "Your military? Your weapons?" Lee So-min, Earth's diplomatic liaison, joined them at a peaceful plaza. She wore the same simple clothes as everyone else. "We have no need for such things," she explained. "Humans learned long ago that violence brings only suffering. We chose a different path," the aliens exchanged glances. In their own worlds, they still had armies and conflicts. The idea of a completely peaceful species seemed impossible. "But your history," Click protested. "We have studied your past. Humans were warriors. You fought terrible wars. You created weapons that could destroy planets." So-min nodded sadly. "Yes, we were once a violent people, but we grew beyond that. 5,000 years ago, we made a choice. We would never fight again." She led them to a vast memorial garden. Millions of white flowers grew in perfect circles. Each flower represented someone who died in humanity's ancient wars. The aliens walked quietly among the blooms, feeling the weight of so much death. "This is why we chose peace," Dae-ho said softly. "We never want to create more flowers for this garden." Deep beneath their feet in tunnels that ran through Earth's core, Park Jin-woo sat at a control station. The maintenance engineer ran his daily checks on systems that had not been used for thousands of years. His screen showed readings from across the solar system. Everything looked normal. Then something caught his eye. Strange energy readings at the edge of the system. Ships, maybe. Big ones. Jin-woo frowned and typed a report. The message disappeared into the computer network, filed away with thousands of other routine reports. Above ground, no one seemed to notice. Back in the memorial garden, the aliens continued their tour. They visited workshops where humans crafted beautiful art. They saw laboratories where scientists studied plants and animals. They watched children learn about music and poetry in schools with no walls. "What do you do for excitement?" asked a young Vrix. "For challenge? For competition?" An elderly human woman named Kim Hee-jin overheard the question. She smiled and gestured to a group of people working together to build a new garden. "We compete to see who can create the most beauty," she said. "Who can help others the most? Who can bring the greatest peace to the world?" The aliens looked confused. In their cultures, competition meant fighting, winning, defeating enemies. This was completely different. As the day went on, they visited more places. Floating farms that grew food in the clouds. Libraries where ancient knowledge was preserved. meditation centers where humans sat in quiet thought for hours. How do you defend yourselves? Click asked as they watched the sunset from a high tower. What if someone attacks you? Some men looked puzzled. Why would anyone attack us? We offer no threat to anyone. We have nothing worth taking by force. Everything we have we share freely, the Netherian speaker hummed thoughtfully. But surely you must have some protection. Some way to fight back if needed. Fight? Deho seemed to consider the word carefully. That is an old concept. We have moved beyond such primitive ideas. Far below, in the tunnels, Jinwoo's report had reached other quiet people like himself. They worked in places the tourists never saw, tending to machines that hummed silently in the dark. These people had simple jobs with simple titles: gardeners, maintenance workers, librarians, teachers. But their eyes were sharp and their movements were precise. When they read Jinwoo's report, they made small adjustments to systems throughout the solar system. Nothing dramatic. Just routine maintenance, they would say if anyone asked. Choi Min-ho worked in one of the Zen districts, a peaceful area where humans went to think and meditate. He tended to a small garden filled with unusual flowers. Each plant was perfectly placed, creating patterns that seemed random but somehow felt right. A young apprentice named Yoon Ji-woo helped him water the flowers. Master Min-ho, she said quietly, I heard strange news today. Ships at the edge of our system. Unknown ships. Min-ho continued his work, completely calm. Did you? How interesting. Aren't you worried? Ji-woo asked. What if they're dangerous? The old gardener smiled and touched a flower that glowed softly in the fading light. Little one, some flowers only bloom when the seasons are right. Winter brings snow, but it also brings the promise of spring. Ji-woo didn't understand, but she trusted her teacher. Around them, other gardeners worked quietly, making tiny changes to their plants. To anyone watching, it looked like normal gardening. Nothing more. As night fell, the alien visitors were taken to comfortable rooms in a peaceful hotel. They had enjoyed their day, but questions filled their minds. How could any species truly abandon all violence? How could they survive in a dangerous universe without weapons or armies? Ambassador Click stood at his window, looking out at the quiet city. Soft lights glowed in the darkness. Music drifted on the night air. Everything seemed so peaceful, so safe. But something felt wrong. No species became this peaceful by accident. No group of living beings could simply choose to never fight again, especially not humans. Their history was full of wars and conflicts. People didn't just change their entire nature overnight. In the crystal depths of her mind, Speaker Crystal Song shared his doubts. Her people had studied humans for centuries. The old humans had been creative, clever, and terrifyingly good at war. Could they really have changed so completely? Below them, the peaceful city slept. In hidden places, quiet people made small adjustments to machines no visitor would ever see. They prepared systems that had waited 5,000 years for someone to wake them up. The flowers in Minho's garden glowed a little brighter in the darkness, as if they sensed that winter was coming.